What's up, fight fans? This is Kurt DeVille with Counterpunch Boxing News, and I have some new news concerning Frank Warren, Daniel Dubois, and Anthony Joshua. Get this, Warren tabs Joyce, Dubois as the favorites in the fight against Anthony Joshua. Frank Warren believes that Anthony Joshua has some significant fights ahead of him. He is just not convinced that the recently defeated British superstar will necessarily get top billing in them. Joshua came up short, of course, against Alexander Usyk, and this is what Frank Warren had to say. He said there are some good fights, which are world-level fights for him. Joshua here in the UK, he said, there's Joyce, there's Daniel Dubois, there's some really good fights there to be made, which I think the public would buy into, and I would make both of them, Joyce and Dubois, the favorite over Joshua, when it is pointed out that those fights would probably have to take place on DAZN given Joyce's contract or Joshua's contract with the streaming platform. Warren disagreed. He said they wouldn't, would they? Warren said he's Joshua, the B side of the card now. He's not the A side anymore. He's the B side. He's the guy who lost 3 of his last 5 fights. Joshua and Joyce used to be sparring partners, of course. And he is not the man anymore, says Frank Warren. Let me counterpunch. I think a lot of people, especially the rival promoters of Joshua, or should I say Hearn, which Hearn promotes Joshua, I think they're praying over his downfall. I think they're really loving the idea of him taking another L. So his third loss, second consecutive loss, is from the same guy. And I think they're really loving it. And I think they're smelling themselves. And I think they should really wake up and smell the coffee. You know, because for Joyce or Daniel Dubois to be A-side over Anthony Joshua, you got to be smoking some major crack. I mean, some powerful shit, too. To think that, oh, it doesn't have to be on DAZN when the contract of Joshua is on DAZN, so you know it's going to be there. Or so you would want Joshua to go to BT because you feel he's not the A side and he makes $100 million a year. Listen, A side, B side means who's marketable and who's not. Who lost the last or whatever is not important. That's not a factor. So when you factor in someone like Arturo Gatti, which was the A side in a lot of fights except for like Oscar De La Hoya, you know, and he was the cash cow at the time, you must look at this without looking at it through the eyes of like a Mayweather-minded reality. And the Mayweather-minded reality is if you lose credibility. Listen, that's not true. People want that to be true. A lot of people buy into that, but it's not true. That's like Daniel Dubois losing to Joyce. Joyce has never lost. Daniel Dubois has. So you mean to tell me Daniel Dubois, just because he's lost, mean he can't outsell Joyce? Who would be favored in a fight between the two would be Dubois. But if Joyce sells the most tickets, he's the cash cow overall. It doesn't really matter. You know, I know Frank's looking at it like, okay, when Oscar De La Hoya was defeated by Floyd Mayweather, then De La Hoya was no longer the cash cow because Floyd took that torch. That's not always the case because, for one, De La Hoya had a rematch clause which was never fulfilled, and for two, De La Hoya was retired by Manny Pacquiao, which also became a major player in the fight in the sport of boxing. Okay, and if he's referring to anybody that should be A side on anything, if it does come down to wins versus defeats, he should be talking about Alexander Usyk. By the way, beat his fighter Joyce's ass in the amateurs not too long ago. You know what I mean? So I mean, it like when you're talking about what a fighter isn't, you're trying to deny what a fighter doesn't do any longer. Anthony Joshua's going to be a higher banking and commodity over Joyce and Daniel Dubois. You know, if he lost the last 2, he still would be. You know what I mean? Not saying that would happen, but for Frank saying that, it's typical, but for him just wanting that, because that's what I feel he desires. He desires that Daniel Dubois and Joyce are more marketable, are the A side over Anthony Joshua. So we already see what he desires. And a lot of times when you hear promoters speak on certain things, they're not speaking on fact, they're speaking on emotion and what they feel should be what it's supposed to be in their mind. So it's like, hey, yeah, I think that Anthony Joshua's now the B side. I mean, that's the stupidest shit I've heard this morning. That's why I had to counterpunch it. Like, really? Anthony Joshua's now the B side to Daniel Dubois and Joyce? Now, if he would have said Tyson Fury, I would have had no objection, because Tyson Fury, for one, he has his momentum. You know, he's never been defeated. So he's that only fighter amongst those three guys that were marketable. He made the most money, but he's that one guy that hasn't been defeated. So that is definitely an argument, right? But for him to say Joyce and Daniel Dubois are now A sides over Anthony Joshua, put the crack pipe down, Frank, and go to rehab. Counterpunch. But anyway, you guys tell me what you think about Frank Warren saying that Anthony Joshua is now the B side to Joyce and Daniel Dubois. Of course, please subscribe. And you guys been Counterpunch. Peace.